Some say it was love. Others say it was a strategy. Well over a decade later, fans are still debating. So is Larry Stylinson ever real? Or was it all a PR stunt? Is it still just queer baiting? So this contract theory, the counter theory, the counter narrative that suggests that Larry was just a manufactured queer love story to sell records, build buzz, access, ban potential in LGBTQ plus markets, or act as a distractor for other storylines. Sure, maybe, but there's a reason I reject that theory, and most fans reject that theory, because the timeline reveals that that's impossible. So what does the paper trail say? So chapter 1, the origins of Larry, that we all know. 2010, X Factor, One Direction's formed. And of course, Harry Styles and Louis Tomlinson have this quickly formed bond, and footage offers a natural, playful chemistry that is so obvious to see. Fans pick up on it almost instantly. From their inside jokes to lingering glances, their dynamic launched a million GIFs. And within months, fans have coined a new term. Well, initially, the fans called them Halo. Larry Stylinson, Louis and Harry came up with that, and that replaced Halo. It was much more catchy. But here's the thing. This wasn't in the press release. There's no official storyline about Harry and Louis being inseparable. If this was PR, it was not very well executed, because from the very beginning, their closeness felt unscripted, organic, and that's exactly why the fans believe it, and actually still believe it. Chapter 2. So what is this counter theory about Larry being some PR strategy, queer baiting, marketing tactic? So this belief that Larry is an intentional creation of a marketing team, and then it was allowed to flourish by management to generate all the social media buzz, fan fiction engagement, clips to fuel global interest. And it goes by this kind of explanation that Psycho, One Direction's label, Simon Cowell's label, noticed that there was some early fan obsession and decided to lean in, allowing Harry and Louis to bond and become its own sort of sub-brand, subplot in the fandom. So there are those who argue that this tactic served as a calculated distraction to keep fans emotionally invested, while Psycho controlled other narratives, like, Zayn the bad boy, darkly mysterious image, the Liam Payne heartthrob appeal, and then roll out the PR faux romances like Haler, which is Harry Styles and Taylor Swift, and Eleanor, Louis Tomlinson and Eleanor Calder. But again, this theory really doesn't hold up under scrutiny, and here's why. All right, chapter 3. If Larry was PR, then why kibosh your own PR project? So this is the biggest flaw in this whole PR theory, is just how quickly and aggressively modest management, Psycho, and Simon Cowell seem to kind of shut down Larry. Because by 2012, Louis and Harry were separated in interviews, but they were able to be with all the other band members. And then, of course, the banning of Larry-related questions, some heavy, heavy public interactions that were erased or edited or forbidden. And then Louis suddenly publicly denying the ship and calling it bullshit. And coinciding with these PR relationships that emerged almost immediately after Larry peaked, like Eleanor, like Haler. So then if Larry was good for business, then why did they work so hard to erase it, almost so forcefully? Because if it were a stunt, then if the stunt was there to optimize revenue, naturally management would have extended it, maybe even teased it along like the other ships. But instead, they did the opposite. They buried it, erased it from history, and the fans noticed. Because if Larry was just this fake marketing ploy, why work so hard to make us forget that it was ever invented? Chapter 4, Timeline of Erasure. So if you just map the key points on the timeline, 2010 to 2011, Harry and Louis are visibly very close, and the fandom naturally starts shipping them. Late 2011 to 2012, Larry, the archetype, explodes in popularity all over Tumblr. Early 2012, Eleanor Calder appears in Lou's life. Tabloid coverage focuses on heterosexual relationships. Mid-2012, that's when the physical separation in the interviews between Harry and Lou began. And then from 2013 to 2015, there was almost no public interaction between Harry and Louis. Then, 2015, One Direction goes on hiatus, and Larry is never officially acknowledged, and Harry and Louis are never seen together ever again. You see Harry at Niall's concert, you saw Louis hanging out with Liam. Recently, Louis and Zayn had reconciled, and Harry and Zayn have appeared on radio shows post the hiatus, but never Harry and Louis. Well, this is not how PR relationships works, because these stunting relationships, stunt romances, and all the PR strategy around them, they usually involve planned appearances, tabloid placements, and these wink, nods to keep the story alive with coordination with the paparazzi. And Larry had none of that. Larry had deletion, denial, and dead silence. Chapter 5. So why I reject the PR theory, the queer baiting theory, and why most fans, or a lot of fans, do. Because it's not just because of how this whole Larry thing happened, it's just also how the whole thing felt. You didn't see any scripted flirting, you saw tender glances, body language that shifted when cameras arrived, real-time discomfort in interviews, Louis' increasingly distressed tone when asked about Larry. And Harry, well, Harry has never denied it, not once. He's just been coy. In fact, Harry leaned right into the ambiguity, writing lyrics that blurred lines, wearing symbols that fans had decoded for years, standing next to rainbow flags and still refusing to label himself. That never felt like performance. It did feel like suppression. And that's why the fandom didn't move on, because it didn't feel like closure. It felt like censorship of a courtship. Chapter 6. The industry pattern. Real love versus PR love, or stunts. Let's zoom out. The music industry has a long history of manufactured relationships. Britney and Justin, who eventually became a real couple, but they were put together. Taylor and Tom Hiddleston, Shawn Mendes and Camila Cabello. These pairings are press-friendly, they're promoted, they're photographed, they're narrativized. Larry doesn't fit that mold, never did. So if it was PR, it was the most poorly managed PR stunt in pop history. And yet the fans were blamed, and the Larrys in particular were abused and really unfairly treated, even by the One Direction fans. Called delusional, obsessive, toxic. But the intensity of their belief didn't come from fantasy. It came from what they saw and what was then erased. And that's where the archive that is in the culture of the Larry fandom took hold, because they were not going to be gaslit. And that is not PR. That's a pattern of the industry burying real emotion because it didn't fit the brand and it was a threat to the profits. So chapter 7. So what was Larry then? So if it was not PR, what was it? There's a couple of things that the various fans believe. Harry and Louis were extremely close, maybe romantically, maybe emotionally intimate. Their bond was noticed by fans and then by management. That bond became inconvenient and then dangerous. So it was suppressed, and the fans who remembered it were dismissed. Larry was not a stunt. It was a casualty of brand protection and an industry machine that is homophobic. And the fans who refused to let it go were not delusional. They were the archivists of a censored, forbidden love story. So Larry Stylinson isn't just a fandom theory, it's a case study in how the music industry edits reality, and how the contract timeline doesn't prove Larry was PR, but it does prove something deeper, and that it proves that the real connection makes the industry nervous, that queer possibility is still treated like a threat, that silence is profitable but fans remember what they saw, And whether Larry was romantic, platonic, a bromance, or something between, it was not fake. And that's why the story still matters. So do you think Larry was PR? If you do, what is your argument? Because there's no way it was, at least not to me. Because I really do think, and I think a lot of Larrys are more likely to be in the school of thought that the truth got buried for the sake of the brand, for profits, for Simon's ambitions. But Louis and Harry were so natural. And it takes more energy to suppress something that's natural and to orchestrate and manufacture something that's not. The thing is, Elton John, look, if this is a common fan phrase, it's talked about. Elton John says, if a rumor continues and persists for this long, it's not a rumor. And the mirroring plus the tattoos. There's no way that these two were not beyond close. Because you can only mirror someone you're completely close with. Like I've said, identical twins can mirror because they're like literal clones of each other. They have matching DNA. But for people who are not clones of each other, who are not biologically related, for them to be able to mirror when they're not looking at each other, which there's so much footage of them doing that. That can only happen if you're very close to someone. That's why they talk about twin souls or twin flames. People talk about how the other side of my soul, how humanity at one point split into male female because that's what is what caused civilization to spend most of their lives looking for the other half. That's what they were talking about, and they had it naturally. I've never seen either of them be able to do that same twinning with a woman. That's why Larry was real. Can't fake that.